I never expected a single decision would lead to an unbelievable journey of self-discovery. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started as a simple choice. Standing at the crossroads of my life, the sun hung low in the sky, painting everything in a golden hue, but the warmth felt distant. My hands trembled as I clutched the worn-out letter, its edges frayed as if it too had been through the wringer of emotions. A choice between the familiar and the unknown stared back at me, tugging at my heart with an urgency that felt almost alive that in my mind raced. I rarely made bold choices. I was the safety net, the one who stayed behind while others leaped into the dark. But that day, something shifted. The shadows whispered secrets, luring me with promises of adventure. I could feel the background noise of my life, the hum of family obligations, the reassuring presence of friends, all blending into a distant melody that no longer soothed me. I looked around at the faces I loved, their expressions hinting at dreams unspoken, hopes tucked away. Was I ready to shatter the silence? I took a step forward, and the world shifted beneath my feet. Suddenly, I stood at the edge of a cliff, overlooking a vast ocean that roared in protest and invitation. The power of nature engulfed me. Waves crashed violently against the rocks below, salt water spraying against my skin, a nameless fear gnawing at my stomach. I thought about my best friend, Hannah, and the way her eyes lit up when we talked about leaving our small town. She always believed in adventure. I sighed, the weight of longing resting heavy on my chest. And then there was Marcus. His laughter echoed in my mind like a favorite song, but there was sorrow entwined within it. Our love had begun to spiral, stolen glances and half-hearted smiles taking over conversations. He wanted stability, a solid foundation. I wanted freedom and escape. Which one did I want more? The air turned thick with tension as I felt the pull of both worlds tugging at me, like a split in my soul. As I stood there, eyes scanning the horizon, a figure appeared out of the mist. A woman cloaked in shadows, her face obscured, hands extended like she was offering something. The air shifted, charged with electricity. Who was she? My heart raced, an unexpected thrill cutting through the fear. The surroundings fell silent, as if the world held its breath. I was drawn to her, but an invisible barrier kept me rooted in place. That moment, clarity washed over me like the tide. A choice lay before me, much larger than simple paths. It was a choice about who I wanted to be. But just as I began to step closer, a loud crack of thunder erupted. An ominous rumble rolled through the atmosphere, blending with my pounding heart. Then, the woman vanished, swallowed whole by the endless fog in that heartbeat. Reality crashed down again. What had I stumbled into? A path of self-discovery? Or something even deeper, something I couldn't yet comprehend? My lungs tightened. My mind raced. What awaited me in this new realm? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sun dipped lower, casting shadows that twisted into strange shapes around my feet. I felt unmoored, as if the very earth beneath me had shifted. Heart still racing, I took a step back from the cliff's edge, absorbing the weight of the silence that hung in the air. Would there be any returning from this moment? I turned away from the precipice and started towards the winding path that led back to town. Each step felt heavy, as if I were leaving a part of myself behind on that rocky ledge, the part that longed for adventure, that wanted to scream at the world to let me in. The other part, the responsible one, whispered that I should focus on what I had, on the comfort of familiarity. I felt as if I was caught in a storm, wrestling torrents of conflicting emotions. I approached the familiar oak tree that marked the edge of my neighborhood. The air thickened with memories. I recalled countless afternoons spent beneath its wide branches with Hannah, our laughter mingling like music on the wind. Where was she now? Did she feel the same restless pull? In those moments of longing, Marcus would find me, pulling me back into the life we'd built together, a life mapped out in certainty. What if this yearning inside me was a sign that I was meant to leave it all behind? I finally reached the pathway leading to my home, but dread gripped me as I noticed the flickering lights inside. It felt too quiet, too still. My pulse quickened. What if they had found out about my indecision? What if they could sense my struggle? As I opened the door, the familiar scent of my mother's cooking wrapped around me like a thick blanket, momentarily easing the weight on my shoulders. But when I stepped inside, I was met with the concerned faces of my family gathered around the dining table. The tension stretched and filled the air, palpable and suffocating. "Where have you been?" my younger brother, Sam, asked, his brow furrowed in concern. I could hear the unspoken question murmured among my family members. Why had I wandered away? "Just taking a walk," I replied, forcing a smile that felt foreign. Their gazes bore into me, searching, as if I were hiding something monumental. I took my seat, the muscles in my body tight, the world outside feeling infinitely more vibrant than this enclosed space. As they discussed weekend plans, I picked at my food, each bite a reminder of my inner chaos. The laughter was warm, but I felt like an outsider, separated by an invisible wall. An uncomfortable realization washed over me. This little haven of normalcy felt like a cage. After dinner, I excused myself, needing air that didn't taste of conformity. Outside, the world was cooler, the gentle night whispering promises. I wandered to the park, trailing my fingers against the rough bark of the trees, immersing myself in the quiet moments of solace. Suddenly, a giggle broke through the midnight calm. I turned to see a small girl, no more than 6, swinging on the old swing set, her laughter bright against the backdrop of the starlit sky. "Hey," I called out, drawn to her joy. "That looks fun." She hopped off the swing, her eyes wide with delight. "You should try?" As I joined her, swinging gently, I felt a fleeting sense of freedom, a heartbeat of hope breaking through my heavy heart. In that instant, it was as if I could feel the weight of expectation lifting, even just a little. For the first time in a long time, I let the joy wash over me. But just as I began to breathe more easily, the laughter faded as the silhouette of a figure emerged from the darkness, heart-stopping and familiar Marcus. His eyes searched mine, carrying a mixture of relief and worry. Despite the thrill of the swing beneath me, my stomach dropped. "Can we talk?" he asked softly, stepping closer. The warmth of his presence felt comforting, but also ignited the worry I'd been struggling to shake. What would he say? Did he know about my conversations with the shadows? Before I could respond, his gaze settled on the little girl, still swinging. "You look happy," he said quietly, a smile creeping onto his face. "I was just swinging," I muttered, my heart racing for different reasons now. "Is that all?" His voice was gentle, probing, but I felt a tidal wave of the unasked questions crashing between us. Would he understand the confusion tearing at my insides? The little girl hopped off the swing and skipped away, her laughter dissipating as quickly as it had come. I met Marcus' gaze, and for a moment, the world around us fell silent, heavy with unsaid words and painful honesty. "Can you really find happiness here?" he asked, sensing the turmoil hidden behind my mask of composure, his eyes piercing through the walls I had painstakingly constructed. In that heartbeat, I realized our paths branched away from each other, even though the foundations were deep-rooted in love. And for the first time, I was terrified of the answer that sat, heavy as stone, in the pit of my stomach. "That I don't know," I whispered, and I recognized the truth behind my uncertainty. In the stillness that followed, the weight of the future pressed down on us, and I wondered if it was possible to embrace both my love for him and the restless wanderlust simmering just beneath the surface. Would I have to choose? Before Marcus could respond, the familiar figure in the mist from my earlier encounter flickered back into my thoughts, haunting and enticing. What awaited me if I made the leap? As quickly as the thought passed, a sudden spark flashed in the distance, illuminating the night sky, momentarily blinding me. A vision of uncertainty took old shapes in my mind, and chaos threaded through my chest once again. And as that light vanished just as swiftly, I knew nothing would stay the same. Each path that lay ahead was loaded with unanswered questions and the weight of inevitable choices, darker and scarier than before. I stood frozen in that moment, the world around me swirling in a haze of uncertainty. Marcus' eyes bore into mine, and I could feel the weight of his question fill the air between us, thickening with every heartbeat. How could I answer him when I didn't even know who I was anymore? I don't know, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. His expression shifted from concern to something deeper understanding, perhaps? You don't have to have all the answers right now, he said quietly, stepping closer. But that doesn't mean you should run away from what you have here. It'll always be right here for you. You know that I wanted to cling to those words, to the promise behind them, but the whisper of adventure still beckoned from the shadows of my mind. All at once, I could feel the boundaries of my reality stretching, threatening to snap. The unspoken truths crouched in the corners of my conscience loomed. Marcus, I began, its resonance pouring from my heart. What if this place isn't enough for me? What if I need more than what you or my family can give? The moment hung heavy between us, and I could see the dawning of realization in his eyes. It was a look I had become familiar with, one that spoke of both hope and despair. You're thinking about leaving, aren't you? He asked, his voice trembling ever so slightly. I don't know, I replied once again, feeling like a coward for not being able to say the truth. I ducked my head, unable to meet his gaze for fear of shattering his world. Maybe you just need time to figure yourself out, he suggested, trying to ease the tension that crackled in the air. There are so many possibilities. But don't lose sight of what's here, of us. The thought stirred something within me, a flicker of warmth illuminating the shadows of doubt. And yet, in equal measure, the pull of the unknown throbbed in my veins like a living thing. Maybe I don't want to lose what's here, I murmured, searching his face for confirmation. But maybe I also need to uncover who I am outside of it all. Just then, a distant sound of laughter cut through the night, drawing our gaze. The little girl from earlier was back, this time her family following close behind, with her father lifting her high into the air. The sight of their simple joy stirred a pang in my chest, an emotion akin to longing for something I had yet to name. If sensing my turmoil, Marcus moved closer, resting his hand softly against the small of my back, grounding me in this tumultuous moment. His warmth was a balm against the uncertainty gnawing at me. You don't have to choose between adventure and your happiness here, he murmured. Why can't there be room for both? I looked up at him, meeting the sincerity in his gaze. What if he was right? Weren't both paths intertwined? But then my heart sunk, a heavy weight settling into my stomach. What if I stayed and felt forever trapped in the life I didn't want? What if the longing would only intensify? I sighed heavily, my head spinning as I wrestled with a choice that felt monumental yet surreal. I'm scared, I confessed quietly, my confession hanging between us like a fragile thread. Could I truly step outside of my comfort zone? It's okay to be scared, he replied gently, his thumb brushing softly against my skin, a silent reminder that I was not alone. But don't let fear dictate your choices. There's a vast world out there waiting for you. I looked past him, seeking the horizon where the sun would eventually rise on a different day, beyond the confines of the life I had known. Yet there was also the tether of my family, their love echoing in the space we had created together. Could I really step away from that? And just when I was about to voice my fears, a sudden shout broke through the tranquility of the night. I turned, my heart stopping as I saw a group of people sprinting toward us, their faces blurred in the dim light. I caught glimpses of panic, a flurry of motion, shouts of alarm. And then, one word sliced through the crowd like a knife. Fire. The amber flicker of flames ignited in the distance, swallowing everything in its path, and I gasped. The tiny village I had loved all my life, the very place that had become both my anchor and my cage, was now under threat, seemingly ready to burn down the walls I had been so desperately trying to escape. As chaos erupted around us, I felt a pull towards the flames, a bone-deep terror slicing through my uncertainty. This was no longer about my journey of self-discovery. I had a choice to make on whether to fight for what I had, or to leap into the unknown fire of possibility. And in that tumultuous moment, the very fabric of my reality unraveled around me, laying possibilities bare as I stood at yet another precipice. The decision I needed to make was no longer just about might, was about home, and perhaps even something greater. And all of it felt explosively, unbearably real. The air crackled with panic as people around me screamed and ran, desperately trying to escape the encroaching flames. My heart raced as I turned back to Marcus, who stood rooted in shock beside me. The lines of fear etching his face mirrored the chaos unfolding behind us. "Come on," I shouted, the urgency of the moment forcing me to act. "We need to help." I grabbed his wrist, pulling him towards the main square where the thickening smoke churned and hovered like a beast ready to consume everything in sight. The ever-growing flicker of orange light danced above the onlookers, and the sound of crackling wood filled the night with an eerie symphony that no longer felt familiar. Around us, families clutched children, gathering supplies and shouting for those who were still inside their homes. My heart ached for all they could lose, and yet there was that selfish flicker in my mind whispering of escape and adventure. This moment was proof that life held dangers that I couldn't ignore, and here, now, I could be part of something greater than myself if I chose to fight. "Where should we go?" Marcus' voice came from just behind me, strained with urgency. I could hear the tremor of his own uncertainty as he remained close, ready to follow my lead. "Let's help the families evacuate," I urged, my spirit ignited by a newfound determination. "We can't just stand here. There are people who need us." Without waiting for a response, I took off toward a cluster of villagers who were struggling to move a heavy wooden crate, the contents inside likely more precious than the wood itself. The flames erupted closer, threatening to engulf everything I had once known. Instinct propelled me forward as I joined the effort, my palms pushed against the rough surface. Every ounce of strength surged through me as we finally managed to relocate the crate away from the inferno. I stole a glance behind at Marcus, who had joined a group of men carrying a child on his shoulder, their eyes wide with alarm. In that brief moment, a sense of solidarity enveloped me, the weight of community pressing against the backdrop of chaos. Then, in a fleeting second, I spotted her, the little girl from earlier, in the arms of a frantic woman who was frantically scanning her surroundings. I felt a pull in my chest, an energy that reverberated through me, urging me to reach her. "They'll get her," I yelled to Marcus, my feet pounding toward them. "Be careful," he called back, his voice straining to stay stable amidst the surrounding turmoil that I pushed through the throngs of people, dodging screams and the whispers of impending danger. The world around me blurred, drowning out my fears as I focused solely on reaching the little girl. When I finally broke through the heavy crowd, I knelt before the woman. "Let me help you." In that moment, time seemed to slow as I locked eyes with the girl. The innocence in her gaze, dulled by fear, reminded me of everything I had ever wanted to protect, everything worth fighting for. "We have to go?" I urged, taking the girl's small hand into mine, just as the shouting intensified around us. The woman nodded, her eyes shimmering with uncertainty, but I could see a glimmer of trust forming. With our small team, we began moving toward the relative safety of a nearby barn, a flickering sanctuary against the consuming flames that roared behind us. On the way, I could feel my lungs tightening with each breath of smoke. I could already sense the threads of my own identity unraveling once more. Who was I in this moment? A savior? A hero? Or just someone afraid to lose themselves within the despair of others? Once inside, we settled the girl and her mother in the far corner, but a sudden crash echoed from the other side. Heavy timbers fell, and the smell of singed earth crept closer as the fire raged. Amidst the chaos, I forced myself to take stock of the people around me. It was then that I noticed Marcus had gathered a few brave volunteers, rallying them to help others still trapped beyond the flames. I watched him, the fear melting away every layer of uncertainty that had clung to me. His courage ignited a flicker of hope deep within my heart. "Come on," he called out, his voice somehow managing to cut through the noise. There might still be others inside. Before I knew it, the instinct to follow was overwhelming. "Marcus," I screamed, running to him, determination outweighing my fears. "We can't leave anyone behind." He turned and nodded, his eyes gleaming with shared resolve. But as we rushed back to where the flames danced hungrily, the heat intensified, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. It was then, beneath the roar of the fire and the clatter of destruction, that a new reality dawned on me. My journey towards self-discovery was no longer a solitary venture. It was intertwined with the lives of those around me. I was a part of this village, a sister, a friend, and now, a fighter. But just as hope flickered into sight, a loud explosion erupted behind us. A section of the building collapsed, sending shards of wood and embers into the air. I staggered backward, narrowly avoiding a falling beam. "Marcus!" I cried, my pulse racing, reeling from the moment. The unmistakable realization struck me Fazda hadn't made it out. "Stay back," he shouted from the other side, pushing against the debris, panic breaking in his voice. And there it was, suspended in this moment between life and death, the choice that echoed in the darkest corners of my heart. I could continue fighting for this home I had always known or leap into the unknown, carrying the already burning flames of my own aspirations. But just as I took a breath to call out to him, a loud crack sounded overhead, and everything seemed to freeze in time as the world around us shifted, the flames lashing out voraciously. I realized with shock perhaps I wouldn't have the luxury to choose at all. The dust settled, a suffocating layer coating my tongue as the sharp smell of smoke turned acrid in my nostrils. Time stretched, a taut wire about to snap, as the chaos twisted into the overwhelming sense of powerlessness gripping my chest. The last remnants of hope clung to me with the ferocity of a child holding onto a belated promise. "Marcus!" My voice echoed into the tumult, swallowed by the inferno's growl, but there was no response. The smoke stirred like a tempest, cascading against my will to push forward. But I couldn't. The weight of the moment, the reality of choice stay or goss hackled my legs to the charred earth that I turned, desperate to see any familiar face. But the world around me had melted into madness. The barn, once a haven, was now a looming trap. I scanned the frantic villagers huddled together in fear, their whispers rising and falling like a haunting melody. Each face echoed uncertainty, their eyes clouded with anguish, cracking against the flickering shadows cast by flames. And then I saw her, the little girl from before, clutching her mother's arm. Her wide eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Something unfurled inside me, a gentle tug that whispered of protection, of purpose. I couldn't let her witness the devastation of loss, couldn't allow her heart to be dulled further by despair. "Stay here." I pointed to a cramped corner that seemed just a bit safer, and the woman nodded, gratitude radiating from her shaky smile. I hoped that my actions, however small, could perhaps offer a semblance of comfort to them. A momentary reprieve. But the sound of splintering would jolted me back. My heart thundered as I turned, scanning the debris and shadows now shifting with alarming speed. I had been close to Marcus a mere heartbeat away, but now the chance to reach him seemed to slip like sand through my fingers. It was then that the scream erupted across the chaos. A man, trapped beneath a beam, his cries piercing through the haze. The people nearby flinched, too paralyzed by fear to move. I was one of them moments ago, but something deep inside shifted. The flicker of courage ignited. There was no time to hesitate. "Help me," I shouted, rushing toward the fallen man, pushing past the throngs that pointed and murmured in horror. My hands trembled with urgency as I dug the soot-laden debris away from him, desperate to free him. But in the ensuing chaos, strength failed. I needed more hands to pull him out. I needed Marcus. And just then, as if fate conspired against me, a cascade of embers fell, blinding me momentarily. I staggered back, caught in a tide of confusion and fear, but something mustered deep within me. I couldn't stop. Not now. As I dug deeper, a blur caught my eye, a silhouette darting into the collapsing shadows. In that instant, I felt a warmth blossom within me, knowing that Marcus was out there somewhere. He wouldn't leave me behind. There was some inkling of hope, a silent pledge tethering us together through the mayhem. In one swift motion, I yanked the last timber away, breathless, the air heavy with despair, and relief came flooding in as I pulled the man free. Relief was short-lived as I looked towards the advancing flames. They were relentless, crawling against the walls as shouts of desperate hands beckoned me back. "Help! Someone help us!" A new voice arose amidst the cacophony of familiar, yet distant sound cutting through the smoke. "Marcus!" I gasped, the realization of his proximity igniting a surge of adrenaline. I couldn't abandon him, not now. "Where are you?" My pleas sliced through the encroaching panic, but all that answered me was a crackling roar as fate seemed to play its cruel design. I rushed toward the sound, navigating the hellish landscape unfolding around me. Each step into the fray pushed the boundaries of fear. Each breath fought against my rising panic. I had been lost before, wandering through the chasms of uncertainty. But never like this, not with lives swirling around me like embers in a gale. Suddenly, just ahead, I spotted a group pushing against the remnants of the crumbling structure. Marcus. Among them. His face was smeared with soot, eyes fierce and alive with a determination I envied. "Over here," I yelled, breaking through the barrier of horrified faces. I reached them just as another beam teetered precariously above. Time stretched, yet again, an eternity housed in a split second, the weight of choice bearing down on me. "Don't move," I shouted, but it felt futile as I witnessed his resolve, the pull of his spirit as fierce as the flames. He reached back toward me through the thickening smoke as if believing we could defy destruction together. But then, the ground trembled, the structure groaned, and in that instant, everything exploded into chaos. My heart raced as I realized what was about to happen. My instinct screamed at me to run, but the fervor in his eyes demanded I stay. And then, with a deafening roar, the roof above us buckled and plunged down, and my world narrowed. The cries of the villagers muffled, my blood roared through my ears like the tempest outside. The choice had to be made: move or risk losing everything in a blink. But before I could reach for him, the tang of regret had already filled the air. A shockwave of truth rang through the smoke, revealing how fear could forge destinies or unravel them just the same. In this moment, I would find my true self, or I would cease to exist altogether. "Marcus!" I screamed one last time, but as the ceiling crumbled, I was thrust backward, darkness enveloping my vision. All of my choices, my heart, and my doubts shattering against a world aflame. And then silencia, a new kind of silence wrapped around me, as if the world had paused, holding its breath in the face of fate. What had I chosen? What had I lost? The echoes of my decisions rumbled like distant thunder, waiting for the storm to break over the horizon. The stillness enveloped me like a dense fog, and for a moment, I hung suspended between two realities, one where I stood in that barn, fighting against an inferno, and another where I had succumbed to a silence that felt more terrifying than any scream. I fought against the darkness, clawing at the edges of consciousness, desperate to find a tether to some semblance of hope. Then came the sharp sting of pain, radiating through my body, igniting the nerve endings with urgency. I gasped, pulling in air tinged with smoke, my senses awakening one by one like a flickering candle in a storm. The world came flooding back in vivid bursts. I was on my back, the ground slightly cool beneath me, the acrid smell of charred wood saturating the air. I could hear the distant chaos, a cacophony of cries blending into the ever-looming shadows of despair. "Help!" A voice clawed its way into my awareness, scratching at the corners of my mind, and before I could fully grasp my surroundings, I struggled to lift my head. The scene unfolded in jagged edges. I was lying outside, the barn a grim silhouette against the backdrop of a fiery sky. I blinked through the haze, and the tangle of motion nearby sorted itself into frantic figures, villagers gathering, urgency driving their every move. "Free the others. We have to pull them out," one man shouted, urgency weaving through his voice as he made desperate gestures towards the collapsing structure. In that moment, vivid certainty washed over me. Had survived. But Marcus, where was he? What had happened to my friend? Adrenaline propelled me off the ground, but my legs stumbled beneath me as waves of fatigue mingled with lingering pain. Each step felt like wading through a thick, viscous memory. I fought against it, edging closer towards the mass of bodies grappling with the wreckage. As I neared, I caught sight of familiar faces, neighbors I had grown up with. Some I had only exchanged cursory greetings. Their expressions ranged from determination to hopelessness, illuminated in the constant flicker of flames. I called out, desperation coating my voice, "Marcus." But still, no answer. Panic constricted my chest as recollections edged forward, his unwavering tenacity, the wild spark in his gaze, as we promised never to abandon each other. I wasn't ready to let go of that bond, of the hope that we would emerge from this unscathed. Out of the corner of my eye, a child cried out, and I turned to see the little girl from before, still clinging to her mother, her face contorted in fear. Without thinking, I rushed to them, crouching low to the ground, my heart aching at the sight of her trembling lip. "You're safe here. Stay close to your mom," I instructed softly, brushing the soot from her cheek gently, as if I could erase the horror from her memory. But as I turned to help others, a sudden flash illuminated the debris, engulfing everything in a terrifying glow. I shielded my eyes just in time to see another section of the barn buckle, sounding a mournful groan under the pressure of its own weight. It was then I saw him, Marcus, emerging from the thick clouds of smoke, his silhouette stark against the flaming backdrop. Relief flooded through me, crashing over the remnants of my despair like waves lapping at a shore. He met my gaze, and instinctively, he reached for me, his expression a mix of worry and unwavering determination. "Get back!" he shouted, and before the words could settle, a deep rumble shook the ground beneath us. I froze, caught in the web of fear, watching as pieces of the barn began to tumble. "Marcus!" I pushed the words through my clenched teeth, summoning every ounce of energy. "We have Tono. You need to leave now." His voice carried a weight that chased the urge to protest away. But there was no chance of retreat. The urgency barricaded my options like the walls of the barn around us. And just then, behind Marcus, I noticed a figure, the man who had originally cried for help, now struggling against the fallen timber, his screams effusing the air with desperation. My heart pounded painfully against my ribcage as time slowed, pulling me into the abyss of choices laid before me. "Marcus." The words spilled out like a dam breaking, the urgency raw and visceral. "We can't leave him. Damn it, we'll both die?" he shouted back, his voice thick with fear and the knowledge I could see flickering in his eyes. "I wouldn't accept that. Help him. We can save him together." Suddenly, strength filled me, a surge of courage cracking through the confines of fear. I shifted instinctively towards the man stuck beneath the debris, an unspoken conviction igniting our shared resolve. "Fine," Marcus growled, joining me with a fierce intensity as we approached the fallen wood. On three. Together, we wrestled against gravity and burned timber, our breaths mingling with smoke, hearts racing as we counted a call and response that spurred us into action. But just as hope began to bubble, the earth quaked again beneath us, and I caught a glimpse of panic in Marcus' eyes. Behind us, a larger beam creaked ominously, threatening a new collapse. "Marcus!" I cried, feeling fear race through my veins, a cold whisper against the hope we'd just mustered. In that flash, the ground felt less stable, as if the choice to act now bore immeasurable consequences. But before another thought could materialize, the ground shuddered violently, and Marcus turned sharply, the decision burning in his eyes. "We can't hold it for long. You need to go. I have to get out now." My heart twisted painfully in my chest as I felt the reality of his words collide against my own desires. But I couldn't. Leaving him behind felt like drawing a chasm between our fates, sealing us apart, when I could feel the threads of our bond stretching to their limits. And that's when time unraveled. Amidst our struggle, I glimpsed the truth, the uncertain destiny we both faced. Every choice rippled through the air, loaded with unvoiced fears. With Marcus' gaze locked onto mine, I made a silent vow that the journey wasn't over yet, not while there was still a flicker of light illuminating our way. Then, in that tragic moment of hesitation, the structure gave way, a multitude of crumbling fragments raining down, and I realized I had to decide: would I step back and save myself, or would I plunge into the unknown, risking everything for the bond that connected us? The imminent fear clawed at my throat as the barn groaned, a symphony of despair playing its final notes. I could only reach for him as darkness wrapped around me once more, with no knowing if I would emerge from its depths either as a savior or a mere shadow of my former self. And then, just as I embraced the darkness, an ominous thought nestled deep within my heart. Was this truly the end of us, or merely the beginning of a deeper reckoning? The air was thick with the remnants of smoke and fear, each inhalation filled with the weight of what had been lost and what might still slip away. As the fierce glow of flames painted the night sky, my heart pounded like a drum, echoing in the hollow of my chest. I blinked through the haze, searching for Marcus' familiar silhouette, but the flickering light played tricks, bending shadows into illusions. Each second felt like a lifetime, stretching between despair and hope. "Marcus!" The sound of my own voice rang in my ears, louder than the crackling timber and anguished cries around me. But silence swallowed my words. leaving only the rushing blood in my veins to echo in the void. I felt raw and exposed, like a thin layer of skin stripped away by the flames, and I longed for the safety of his presence to ease the jagged edges of my panic. And then it hit me, a sickening wave of realization. If I let him go, if I chose the path of self-preservation, what would remain of me? Would all I had ever known become nothing but echoes of days once filled with laughter and camaraderie? My hands trembled as I steadied myself against the remains of the barn, half expecting the earth to split beneath me, taking whatever remnants of light had rallied there. But the world twisted just then, pivoting on the axis of choices made. I caught sight of movement at the edge of the wreckage, a slip of fabric caught beneath a fallen beam, fluttering like a white flag of surrender against a backdrop of orange fury. My heart dropped. It was Anna, the widow who had stood in the market square only days before, selling her vegetables. The image of her weary smile flashed through my mind, stark against the present chaos, and in that instant, the weight of my decision shifted. Anna! I yelled, my voice nearly lost in the roar. I stumbled backward, urging every muscle in my aching body to lurch toward her, while fear plucked at my insides. Hang on. Hold on. I rushed across the uneven terrain, dodging smoking pieces of timber that threatened to crush dreams, hopes, and lives alike. The world narrowed to her single desperate cry, piercing the darkness like a beacon. The moment I reached her, her terrified gaze locked onto mine, and the realization of her vulnerability struck me with the force of a wild wave. Help, please. Her voice trembled, laced with despair, as her grip weakly tugged at my arm. Just hold on. We'll get you out. I promised, even as doubt clawed at my resolve. I could see her ankle pinned under a heavy, charred trunk, and my heart raced against the inevitable conclusion that I couldn't save both her and Marcus in this moment. My mind spiraled with the weight of guilt. Each choice felt like a betrayal, betraying Marcus to save Anna, or abandoning Anna to reach Marcus. The choice was shaping into an unresolvable spiral, suffocating beneath layers of fear. Desperation clawed at me, but through the roar of my thoughts, I spotted Marcus again, silhouetted against the night. He hadn't moved from the place we had been, eyes darting back and forth between me and the utter chaos that surrounded us. An unspoken understanding passed between us, and then I saw a fierce determination igniting in his gaze as he made his way toward us, and the world erupted in a cacophony of sound and fury. Get away! He bellowed, rushing forward through the smoke, and for once, I saw a strength within him that overshadowed the turmoil. I could see the sweat glistening on his brow, the flames illuminating the courage that existed often beyond reckoning. No, I shouted, shaking the roots of my fear from the shroud of doubt. We could do this together. We can save her, together, he echoed, a single word pregnant with the storm of our connections, the unbreakable threads that bound us. The space we occupied shrank with the urgency, and suddenly, our movements synchronized, an unspoken dance driven by the desperate need to rescue hope from the jaws of despair. That we pressed against the timber together, focusing on the pivot point, pouring our strength into a single moment that felt little more than a flicker against the relentless inferno. The roar of flames consumed the air around us, yet in that suffocating heat, a spark ignited a pathway through steam and smoke. Just a bit more. I grunted, sweat blurring my vision as I pushed with everything I had, Marcus beside me straining with the same ferocity. The indignant would release a mournful groan, and Anna's cries pierced through the chaos surrounding us. We could reach her. I could feel it in my bones, the way our unity fanned the flame of hope within this dark tempest. My mind whirled, the weight of everything I'd ever feared collided with an unexpected clarity. If I felt a despair, nothing would change. But if we fought, if we dared to defy this moment, we could emerge from the wreckage forged by our bond, stronger than ever. With a final thrust and a desperate cry, the beam shifted, and I saw Anna's face bloom with palpable relief as we freed her from the clutches of the smoldering remains. But just as hope soared within me, the world shook violently, the ground beneath surrendering to the terrible weight of the barn, sending up a plume of ash and confusion. Get out! Marcus shouted, the urgency of the moment cracking his voice like a whip. Instinctively, I turned, pulling Anna quickly toward me as we stumbled back from the heart of collapse. In that instant, a flash of light cut through the darkness, a tremor in the air that whispered promises and portents. I turned to Marcus, fear coiling like a snake in my gut. We have to run, but as we took a step back, I halted. Something vivid caught my eye by the barn's entrance, glimmering shards of metal, a memory almost forgotten as they glinted ominously in the fiery light. My breath caught. Marcus, I gasped, pointing. I had first encountered the glimmering pieces not long before at the old watchtower, remnants of the town's battle, fragments that had belonged to a heart broken but still beating against all odds. Before I could elaborate, a thunderous crash echoed, and with it came a wave of debris. Anna screamed, Marcus turned, and I stood paralyzed as an agonizing realization washed over me. Those pieces of metal were no ordinary shards. They were remnants of a weapon forged by hatred long ago, a connection tying us to something greater than this moment, a legacy steeped in darkness and unanswered questions I had yet to face. Run? The urgency in Marcus' voice pushed through my reverie, pulling me back toward the dreadful unknown. But just as I began to move, a figure emerged from the smoke, another silhouette defined against the fire, familiar and unthinkable. Don't leave me. The voice was unmistakable, a haunting echo of the past. It was Caleb, my estranged brother, returned from the shadows I hadn't known he occupied, carrying with him the weight of our fractured ties and all the looming revelations that came with them. And in that moment, as I frozen in disbelief, fate twisted deeper into the jagged depths of our mess, all of us connected by blood, woven together in a tapestry of choices yet to unfold. The inferno raged on, and I stood caught between that reckless inferno and the truth I had yet to confront, a reckoning that could shatter not only my world, but also the bond one had with Marcus, a bond now illuminated by the chaos of our shared history. The flames flickered brighter, illuminating the shadows of secrets that begged to surface, the very threads of my identity unraveling into the rawness of discovery, leaving me gasping for clarity amid the smoke. Would I find the strength to bridge that chasm of memories past, present, and uncertain futures, or would I be consumed by the very darkness I had sought to escape? All I could do was take a breath, clutch Anna tightly, and step forward into the uncertainty. Amidst the backdrop of chaos, I felt the ground shift beneath me, a tremor of unease rippling through the fabric of the night. My eyes darted from Caleb's shadowy figure to Marcus, whose face mirrored the shock and confusion wrestling within me. It was surreal. I had imagined the day our paths crossed again, but never in this cataclysm of flames and despair, never with the weight of lives at risk. Caleb, I shouted, forcing the name through the crushing weight of my disbelief. He had been absent for so long, a fugitive from our family, lost in the tempest of his own choices. Our past hung heavily between us, layered with unresolved anger and buried sorrow. I had thought I was finished with the ghost of our shared history. Now, it loomed larger than the flames that threatened to engulf everything around us. Don't come any closer, Marcus commanded, drawing Anna protectively beside him, his stance shielding her from the tumultuous emotions spiraling around us. I felt a mix of gratitude and instinctive fear as I watched him, always the protector, but I was helpless now, my heart torn between the past and the present. I am not here to hurt you, Caleb called, his voice strained, barely rising above the crackling flames. I need you to listen to me. Here are things you don't understand. My mind raced, emotions colliding as memories of our childhood surfaced, playful summers that had melted into bitter winters, laughter transformed into arguments. I had wanted to forget, to sever ties with everything he represented, yet here he stood, igniting the embers of hope and resentment intertwined as one. Things like what? I demanded, desperately holding onto the thread of clarity in this whirlwind. You vanished, Caleb. You left me. What could you possibly have to say that could change any of this? Can't you see? His voice broke, desperation unraveling the confidence he wore. The fire isn't an accident. There are forces at work. That enough. Marcus barked, urgency radiating from him as he peered at the swirling smoke and chaos. I could see him weigh his options, balance the fragile nature of life and death against the fragility of trust. We don't have time for this. But despite Marcus' protest, Something deep within me stirred a flicker of loyalty that rippled through the haze of heartbreak. No matter how fractured our relationship had become, Caleb remained my brother. "We do have time," I whispered, though my own heartbeat seemed to echo in the deafening noise. "Tell me what you mean, Caleb." Caleb stepped closer, his silhouette sharpening against the onslaught of fire, revealing the gaunt features of stress carved into his being. "The weapon, the one you saw, it was meant to do far more. It's connected to everything happening here. The anger, the destruction, it's just the beginning." That I exchanged a glance with Marcus, uncertainty laying heavy between us. "What do you mean? What connection?" "There are people within the town, individuals who have sought power through chaos. They're responsible for the fire." Caleb's urgency pulsed through the air, his eyes pleading. "They've manipulated everything. We all got dragged into it." A chill crept down my spine. Expectations I had long buried flared anew. "You need to stop. Just focus on getting us out of here." I felt the tightness of panic grip my throat, a reminder of our reality. "The fire, it's wreaking havoc on us." Marcus interjected, gripping my arm for support. "We need to run. Now." But Caleb reached out, desperation edging his voice. "Wait. You must understand. They're going to come for you, for all of us. We can't escape by running." "Then what? You expect me to trust you after all this time?" A part of me was defensive furious. The warmth of blood ties twisted into icy suspicion. "You think you know my life? You think the hurt just disappears? I know I can't change the past." His voice cracked like the burning timber around us. "But I need you to see the bigger picture. If you walk away now, it's not just the fire you'll have to face. They won't let you go." I felt the weight of his words crashing down on me, colliding with the everyday truths I had clung to for dear life. The relationships that grounded me, the pressures of the past breathing life into uncertainty before me. "Caleb," I breathed, struggling to process the gravity of our situation. As the smoke thickened, dreams hung in the balance, half-formed possibilities veiled in the danger that loomed around every corner. Could our history be rewritten, or was this simply another twist in a disastrous tale? Before I could finish my thought, a sharp crack reverberated through the air, slicing my awareness. I turned just in time to see another portion of the barn collapse inward, spewing embers like 1,000 angry fireflies into the night. Panic surged, merging fear and instinct before I could truly comprehend what was happening. "Run!" Marcus shouted, tugging Anna away from the inferno, each step a haunting reminder of what was at stake. I wanted to follow, to escape the throbbing chaos, but my feet rooted to the ground, drawn to the shocking sight of Caleb Defiance lighting his determined gaze even as the flames crept closer. "Please, stay together," he urged, sensing the gulf widening just as the flames roared in approval. I should have fled, should have followed Marcus, and Anna sought the safety that beckoned. But something in Caleb's wistful plea broke the dam of my resolve, releasing torrents of unresolved pain and a flicker of understanding. "I can't leave you behind," I found myself saying, the admission barely a whisper against the chaos swirling around us. Suddenly, decisions became pathways laden with futures yet unknown, destinies intertwined between the flickering flames of hope and despair. "Then we'll fight this together," Caleb replied, resolve penetrating the air bearing witness to uncertainty. A crackle erupted from the barn as if the world around us dared to respond. "Together." But as those words crystallized in the air, an even deeper realization seeped into my bones, the troubling notion that in choosing to stand against the flames of the past, I could very well be fanning the embers of a future darker than I could ever have imagined. And as the flames licked higher, I knew that whatever lay ahead would test every bond one held dear, shattering the very core of who I thought I was. But now, with Caleb and Marcus by my side, I stood on the threshold of an uncharted journey facing shadows I never expected to confront, relinquishing the safe, familiar spaces I clung to. The fire raged on, but in the heart of that chaos, I felt an unexpected flame of purpose ignite within me, ember that sought to guide our path forward into a darkness thickened by both danger and possibility. Our destinies intertwined as we stepped into the unknown. The heat clawed at my skin, forcing droplets of sweat to bead on my forehead, but the inner tumult simmering within me felt far more oppressive than the flames around us. I exchanged frantic glances with Marcus and Anna, whose wide eyes mirrored my own confusion and fear. It was like we had stepped into a nightmare from which we couldn't awaken, every moment steeped in urgency, as Caleb's voice entwined with the crackling fire. Together, I murmured, almost to myself, as if speaking the word aloud could tether my fleeting resolve to a tangible reality. But together meant facing truths I had long since buried. It meant seeking the answers that would link our fates to the chaos unraveling around us. "Let's move," Marcus snapped, breaking my reverie. The sound of his voice cut through the haze like a siren, and the urgency settled upon my shoulders like a familiar shroud. However, detaching my gaze from Caleb was an impossible task. "Where?" I asked, desperate for a plan, my heart racing as I felt gravity tugging me in both directions towards safety with Marcus and Anna, and towards the fire-drenched wreckage of my brother. "We have to get out of here. There's an old barn nearby," Caleb said, his brow furrowing as he tried to piece his thoughts under pressure. "It's got to sell air if we can reach it. We might find shelter and a place to hide while we figure this out." I felt a rush of adrenaline at the thought of moving, yet uncertainty gnawed at my insides. "Will that stop whoever is doing this?" "It's not about stopping them right now," he replied, urgency edging his words. "It's about survival. I promise you. There's a plan and I'm risking everything to make sure we can see it through." My heart pounded heavily, clashing against the walls of despair that had long held me captive. But the flicker of hope in his eyes reminded me of the roadmap we had once shared, the unspoken understanding of sibling loyalty that had defined our childhood. Perhaps amidst these flames, there lay a path to mend what had once been broken. Everything around us roared in rebellion as another section of wood broke free, crashing against the ground with deafening finality. "We have to go?" Marcus shouted, reeling me back to the peril at hand. Now, without another moment to lose, I turned on my heel and sprinted towards the trees lining the clearing, my heart racing alongside my thoughts. Caleb fell in step behind me, breathless but determined. Anna and Marcus followed closely, the tension in the air weaving around us like the smoke, thick and choking that we ducked through the underbrush, branches clawing at our clothes as we sought refuge from the flickering horror snapping at our heels. Each step was unsteady, the ground uneven and treacherous, but the fear of being caught by the flames lent us a frantic energy. My mind was a whirlwind of questions, each more suffocating than the last. Could Caleb be trusted? Had he truly changed? And more importantly, who were these people pulling our strings from the shadows? Suddenly, a frail light flickered through the trees, a beacon edging closer with every pulse of our frantic hearts. It was the old barn Caleb spoke of. As we neared the structure, I could see its weathered timbers, a remnant of a bygone era swallowed by ivy and neglect, a place cloaked in the potential for secrets and revelations. "Here?" Caleb urged, pushing open the heavy door and ushering us inside. I stepped over the threshold, the musty air pressing against my senses, filled with an eerie stillness that starkly contrasted the chaos we had just narrowly escaped. Inside, the beam from a single, bare bulb swayed gently, casting shadows that danced like phantoms across the walls. I could see a trapdoor near the back, nestled in the wooden Floringa gateway to the unknown. "Over there," Caleb pointed, his urgency igniting my instincts. "We can hide down there." I hesitated momentarily, the weight of the decision settling within me. "What if this is a trap?" I blurted, my instinct to protect myself flaring even as a part of me yearned to trust him. "We'll never know unless we take that leap," he replied fiercely, the passion coursing through him a stark reminder of the bond we had once shared. "Whatever is coming after us doesn't give us time to second-guess." His words struck a chord with me, and I felt a flicker of trust igniting amidst the fears that clutched me. "All right," I whispered, willing myself to believe in that flicker, to embrace the possibility of hope nestled within our chaos. As we reached the trapdoor, Marcus stood guard, scanning the dimly lit surroundings, tension palpable in the air. "Go," he urged as Anna climbed down first, her small form disappearing. Then Caleb followed closely by me. I took a breath to quell the swarm of doubts, pushing aside the urge to linger in the light, knowing that once I stepped into the unknown, there would be no turning back, not just from the potential danger lurking above, but from the truth of who we were. The cellar was damp and dark, the smell of earth wrapping around us like a cloak, the walls heavy with silence. "Is it safe?" I whispered, fear creeping into the edges of my voice. Caleb nodded, glancing at Marcus. For now that we settled into the dimness, hearts racing as the weight of our decision pressed down upon us. All around me, the darkness felt alive, buzzing with the potential for both revelation and torment. I realized then that my decision had altered the course of our lives entirely. But as I steadied myself to take in our new reality, a chilling thought seized me. If instead of escaping the chaos, would step directly into the heart of it? An anxious shiver wandered down my spine, for outside, the flames danced viciously against the walls of our sanctuary, while inside, shadows began coiling around our resolve, whispering secrets of the past, yet to be unearthed. I know I said we would fight together. I spoke softly, uncertain, as revelations loomed ahead of me like the shadows in the cellar. But what if we're not just fighting for ourselves? Then we fight for everyone, Caleb breathed, unwavering. And I promise, this is only the beginning. In that darkness, surrounded by the chilling truth of his words, a chilling realization welled within me, intertwining with the embers of fear. Perhaps it wasn't just our lives that hung in the balance, but the very fate of everyone who remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing outside. And just as hope flickered with possibility, I understood we were deeper into a journey of consequence than I had ever comprehended, where every revelation could set fire to a world we thought we knew. The sound of heavy footsteps approaching outside the barn shattered the fragile silence. The moment of truth loomed, with a choice more daunting than any I had faced yet, echoing in the shadows of our hidden refuge. I could feel the heaviness in the air, a suffocating reminder that choices had led us to this moment, and that we were standing at the brink of something monumental. As the footsteps grew louder, grinding through the echoes of our breath, I held tightly to the trembling hope within me, a flickering flame against the encroaching darkness. Caleb and Marcus were silent shadows beside me, their presence both comforting and haunting, intertwined with the love and anguish of our shared history. I took a moment to absorb our reality, the muffled chaos outside turning my heart into a battlefield, as feelings fought fiercely for dominion, the fear of loss warring against a flicker of hope. Suddenly, the trapdoor creaked as a figure loomed above us. The glow of the embers flared and cast ghostly shadows over their face. Anxiety gnawed at me as I braced for the inevitable confrontation, uncertain if it would lead to salvation or doom. "It's just us," I whispered to encourage the calm, but it felt like a lie even to my own ears. The figure hesitated, filling the air with anticipation that clung to my skin. In an instant, the door swung wide, illuminating the dank cellar with a burst of firelight that danced and flickered ominously. My heart raced as the figure stepped into the light, and unwelcome familiarity settled in the pit of my stomach. "Caleb," the voice rasped, low and harsh like the crackle of flames, sending an undeniable chill down my spine. My brother's name issued from lips that bore a history fraught with tension, a face I recognized as both ally and adversary. "You shouldn't have returned." The chill spread through the air as I turned to face Caleb, whose eyes darted in disbelief, shrouded by shadows and flickering doubt. This was not just a brother I confronted, but an echo of our torn past, the remnants of painful choices that had fractured our bond and set this conflict ablaze. "Amelia," he said softly, though his voice trembled. "I thought we were done with this, finished with his reach. What are you doing here?" I pressed, holding on to my anger like a shield, unwilling to let it shatter in the face of betrayal despite the warmth of familial ties. This is my fault," Caleb murmured, a raw confession that fell from him like heavy snowflakes, lingering in the air. "They've come for me. It was supposed to end with me, to break their grip. But they don't know how to let go." My heart twisted painfully. I had not only stepped into danger, the flames surrounding us were a manifestation of every unresolved conflict, every fear I had buried. "We need to leave," I insisted, urgency burning in my voice. "They will come for you, for all of us." But his gaze shifted to the door, silence settling like a thick blanket. "If I leave, they will find you. I won't let them hurt you." I blinked in disbelief, the enormity of his sacrifice crashing over me. "You don't have to protect me, Caleb. We're fighting together. This is about more than just you." But the truth was, his words ignited an inevitable reality. I was right. This was not just about our safety. It was about everything unknown that loomed on the horizon, merging our worlds until now fluidly separate. "I don't have time for this," the figure above shouted, interrupting our confrontation, anger edging his voice. "They are coming." A flurry of footsteps echoed outside, the pressure suffocating. "Brace yourself," Marcus snapped, moving swiftly to barricade the entrance with a heavy wooden crate, his muscles taut and determined. And that's when the first blow hit a loud crack and the door flew open, revealing faces twisted with malice, accompanied by an anger that threatened to swallow us whole. "We know you're in there." My heart raced in my chest as I felt the weight of shadows, the midnight whispers of uncertainty clawing at my resolve. Time stretched painfully, the world around us sickeningly slow as I glanced at Caleb, who stared back with an intensity that was almost suffocating. "A distraction might work," he said quietly, the strength in his voice forged through understanding. "If we can split them up, we can escape." "Do it," Marcus replied, his determination folding seamlessly into the urgency of the moment. "Well, follow your lead." An unexpected partnership, woven in necessity, began to bend the boundaries formed by past betrayals. And with every heartbeat echoing the potential of choice, a spark ignited within me. "We can't just run. Well, face this." But as I spoke, a reckoning unfurled. I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to reclaim agency in this shattered world. Together. The word tumbled from my lips as I clasped my hands, feeling the weight of the past dissolve into the possibility of who we could become. And in that moment, the chaos surged forward, a visceral reminder that every decision would simultaneously carry us closer to danger and liberation. "Caleb," I added, hoping to bridge the past as I locked my gaze upon him. "Show me the truth." I felt it, then a warmth of a fragile bond forming anew, layered with scars yet to fade. He took a breath, steadying himself, and with that shared flicker of realization, his decision solidifying the tattered threads of our existence now stained by ambition and resolution. "Are you ready to wake up?" he asked, the words a call to arms, a return devoid of fear. I nodded, no longer tethered to the shadows of my past, but ignited by the brightness we could forge. As we braced ourselves against the darkness, I exchanged glances with Marcus and Anna, feeling our unity deepen and intertwine like branches rising defiantly amidst the rubble. And as we erupted from that dim refuge into the chaotic world above, fire blazing all around, we chose to dive headfirst into uncertain tides, united, resolute, ready to leave behind that which no longer served us. "Together," I shouted as we surged forward, engulfed in chaos yet propelled by the strength that had returned. Hope surged within me, feeling the embrace of liberation as we pushed against obstacles ahead, a testament to the resilience forged from every choice we had ever made. And in those moments, we discovered something sacred that blossomed amid ruin, truth inscribed in our hearts, an unyielding bond that would illuminate the path forward, no matter how dark the night around us danced. As the flames danced behind, relentless and unmerciful, I understood this would not be the end but the dawn of something transformative. The weight of my past melted away with every courageous stride, leaving behind the heavy chains of fear and embracing the unknown within. No longer would I remain a whisper in the shadows. As dawn approached, the flame of possibility surged brighter, illuminating our fight and carrying us into the futures we were meant to reclaim. And as the night encroached on the remnants of the past, I held fast to that singular truth: the moment we chose to face the fire was the moment we learned how to rise anew. The flame had forged us, and we would emerge into the warmth of a new beginning, together. Always together.